I started my jewellery because a friend of mine, we were collecting children from school, and she was showing me the ring she'd finished that day, which was a moonstone, and I've always had a passion for moonstones. So I joined Morley College and was taught by Gunilla Treen, she's half Swedish, and she had some very original and innovative ideas. I've had lots of commissions over the years, and they've been fun to work on, and they've often pushed me in a different direction and made me start a style that I hadn't been using before. For the Green College in Oxford, I made a bowl of the winds, and I chased this bowl into 8 different segments using a steel tool. And I've now used that in a lot of my silversmithing. I like to put these lines in afterwards. It both changes the shape of the bowl and it gives a feeling of movement, which comes back to Gunilla Treen and her liking of movement. I've also made a caviar bowl for a Saudi princess, and I made guitar buckles for Paul McCartney for his guitar. But I never actually met him. It was all through an agent, so although it sounds very exciting, it wasn't quite as exciting as it might have been. And I also like my little simple things that I make, like the little salt bowl. It's one of the first things I've ever made, and it rocks gently, and it is quite small and very self-contained. And every time I sell one, I make another. But a lot of my other work, once I sell it, that's it. I don't make it again. But the salt cellar is sort of my mark, my special thing, the one thing that I think of as mostly my work. Like Liberty of London commissioned me to make a piece for their new silver room, which I did, and that was very exciting. I've also made some church chalices and patterns for Christ of the Cornerstone, a new church in Milton Keynes, which is an octagonal church, and the chalices are octagonal in the same sort of shape as the plan of the church. And that church was inaugurated by the Queen, and I was there, and I had the pleasure of watching her walk up to the rail and take communion and using my chalices and patterns, which was a very exciting day. And I've got my work in the museum in Aberdeen, and I've demonstrated in Portsmouth Cathedral, also at Broughton Castle, which is very close to here. I made such a noise in Broughton Castle, they pushed me out into the garden. They wanted to have 4 or 5 craftspeople making the work that had been part of making that great big castle when it was made, I don't know how many 100 years ago. So they had me as a silversmith and a stone carver and textile, Sue Rangeley, and I made such a noise I gave everyone a headache, so they moved me out to the garden. This piece I'm making for a school. It's to commemorate a head girl who unfortunately died. Well, she was head girl about 3 years ago, I think. And I start this piece with a flat piece of silver, as always, and I sink it. I have a wooden former, which I've cut a hole out in the centre of it, and I sink the silver down into this hole to a depth that I feel is right. I'm planishing the metal. You start by raising and make heavy, big lumps of movement on the metal, and then it has to be planished over a stake that fits it exactly. And after working the metal, you have to anneal in order to realign elements. And then you can start working again. The pitch is to support the metal while I chase the leaf shape in, And first I have to heat it in order to push the pitch into the place, build it up so that it does support the bowl where I want it to support it. Then I heat the centre and all round to make the bowl stick to it, and push it down, push it well down. I still have to heat the metal because the kind of chasing I do, the pitch has to be soft so that the metal moves down and changes its shape. And I use a big steel punch and chase it down onto hot pitch, hot metal and hot pitch, and when it gets cold it has to be reheated. My work is really finished after that, but in order to complete the bowl, to finish it off, it has to be sent to Goldsmith Hall to have my mark put on it, and they hold my mark for me. So it's sent to Goldsmith Hall, who return it to me. I then send it to the engraver to engrave the wording on it, and that's then returned to me. And finally it goes to be polished. It has the gilding inside the bowl. I like this combination of gold and silver. It gives a richness to it. And all my work, all my bowls have that combination of gilding and silver. And so it's sent off and it's polished and gilded, and that is the final piece, finished. It's always been that way with silversmiths and jewellers. You do your part and then you use other people, other firms to do the bits that they're good at, like the gilding or the engraving or the hallmarking. I'm teaching in my workshop now, which I enjoy very much. It's fun having somebody come in and go away having made something, and the pleasure they get from that. And it's much easier than you'd imagine. And raising a bowl, for instance, you start with this flat piece of silver and you hammer it and you hammer it and you hammer it and you end up with this little bowl, and it's just like magic that something which was flat and boring has turned into something which is going to live forever. And it's a lovely thing to do.